Middle-earth had two Dark Lords. One wanted to destroy everything, every mountain, every forest, every living thing, until nothing but darkness remained. The other wanted to rule everything, to make every creature bow, to impose perfect order on a world that would suffer forever under his boot. And here's what most people miss. If Sauron had been just a little less extreme, he might have been Morgoth's greatest enemy instead of his servant. Because these two weren't the same kind of evil at all. One was chaos incarnate, the other was tyrannical order. And understanding the difference changes everything you thought you knew about Middle-earth's darkness. Let's establish who these beings actually were, because their origins explain everything about them. Morgoth, originally called Melkor, was the mightiest of the Valar, the gods who shaped the world. He was the firstborn of Eru Ilúvatar's thought, the most powerful being in creation, aside from God himself. His brother was Manwë, king of the Valar. During the early days of Arda, before the sun and moon existed, Melkor was supreme in power. Sauron was Amaya, a tier below the Valar. He began as a servant of Aule, the smith god who loved crafting and ordering things. In the beginning, Sauron had good qualities. He was an incredible craftsman. He loved efficiency. He hated waste and chaos. And those very qualities led to his corruption. Morgoth's crimes reshaped the world. He destroyed the two lamps that lit the ancient world. He destroyed the two trees that gave light to Valinor. He stole the Silmarils and murdered Finwë in the process. He cursed Húrin and watched his family destroy themselves. He attempted genocide against every free people of Middle-earth. Sauron inherited his master's mantle and added his own horrors. He distributed the cursed rings of power. He destroyed Eregion and tortured Celebrimbor to death. He corrupted Númenor from within and drowned an entire civilization. He orchestrated the genocide of the Entwives. He waged a 1,000-year war against every free people that remained. Together, their kill count stood in the millions. Together, they reshaped continents and broke the world itself. But despite all this devastation, Morgoth and Sauron were fundamentally different kinds of evil. And that difference matters. Understanding their motivations reveals why they operated so differently. Morgoth's descent into evil is almost tragic in its simplicity. He desired to create true life, something only Eru Ilúvatar could do. During the music of the Ainur, when the world was being sung into existence, Morgoth tried to introduce his own themes, to make creation follow his will instead of Eru's. And when Eru told him that everything he did would ultimately serve the greater design anyway, Morgoth broke. His motivation became childishly simple. If it isn't mine, I'll destroy it. That's it. That's all Morgoth became. Pure chaos, a cosmic temper tantrum. The death and destruction he caused wasn't strategic. It was spite. He hated that he couldn't truly create, so he dedicated his existence to destroying what others had made. Morgoth is, at his core, just a supremely powerful child, having an eternal tantrum because he couldn't get what he wanted. Sauron is more complex and, in some ways, more disturbing. Unlike Morgoth, Sauron genuinely believed he was right. He loved order and efficiency. He hated wastefulness. And he convinced himself that the world would be better if everything operated according to his perfect design, even if it meant enslaving every living creature to achieve it. This is what allowed Morgoth to corrupt him. Under the Valar, there was bureaucracy, limitations, rules. But under Morgoth, Sauron had freedom to impose his vision. Morgoth recognized Sauron's talent and appointed him as the first commander of Angband, giving him authority to organize, to plan, to make things run efficiently. So from their motivations alone, the difference is stark. Morgoth was pure chaos, destruction for destruction's sake. Sauron was tyrannical order, domination for the sake of perfect control. The way they conducted themselves reveals even more about their natures. Morgoth behaved like an agent of chaos. He hated elves, he hated men, he hated dwarves, he hated everything that wasn't him. His actions were often irrational, driven purely by spite. Case in point. Instead of immediately fleeing Valinor after stealing the Silmarils, he risked capture just to murder Finwë, largely because he hated Feanor. Another example. The Easterlings served him faithfully in battle, and he promised them Beleriand as a reward. Instead, he locked them in Hithlum and brutalized them. Why? Because they were men, created by Ilúvatar, and he hated that. Morgoth's spitefulness created his own enemies. His murder of Finwë and theft of the Silmarils led the Noldor to follow him to Middle-earth and wage a 600-year war against him. He was genuinely surprised by this. He never thought about consequences. He just acted out of pure malice. His treatment of men led some to rebel and become the Edain, the ancestors of the Dúnedain. Through his destructive but careless actions, Morgoth was the architect of his own downfall. In warfare, Morgoth preferred blitzkrieg assaults, overwhelming force, surprise attacks. This led to catastrophic defeats early on before he learned to actually plan. And even with all his power, Morgoth was a coward. He almost never fought personally, conducting his wars from deep within Angband. His only personal combat was his duel with Fingolfin, and even then he was terrified. Sauron operated completely differently. He wanted to rule the world, not destroy it. Destruction was a tool, used only when necessary. The rings of power exemplify this perfectly. He made them to control the elves. Only when they became aware of his treachery and refused to submit did he decide to destroy them. Sauron didn't hate elves or men by default. But if you resisted him, you served no purpose in his perfectly ordered world, and he would methodically work to eliminate you. He was calculating, deliberate. Every action served a greater plan. Even his most heinous deeds had strategic purpose. His destruction of the Entwives was to deny the last alliance a place to rest and resupply during their march to Mordor. Sauron was extremely cautious in warfare, often taking centuries to plan invasions, even if it gave his enemies time to prepare. He fought wars on multiple fronts, exploiting every weakness. Unlike Morgoth, Sauron wasn't a coward. He sometimes personally led his armies. But he was a terrible fighter. His combat record: 0 wins, 1 loss to Huan the Hound, 2 losses to Gil-galad and Elendil. Sauron's strength was never physical combat. It was manipulation, planning, and overwhelming strategic superiority. Despite their differences, Morgoth and Sauron shared certain traits. Both caused death on a massive scale. Both industrialized war with liberal use of slavery. Both delighted in corrupting or dominating former enemies. Both were extremely cunning, Morgoth having Gelmir executed in front of his brother to bait Fingon into attacking prematurely during the Battle of Unnumbered Tears. Sauron tricking Gorlim with the promise of reuniting with his dead wife, just to learn Barahir's location. And both suffered the same fatal flaws: delusion and ignorance of the nature of good. They fundamentally misunderstood their enemies, which made them fearful and doubtful. Both poured their native power into physical objects. Morgoth into Arda itself, Sauron into the One Ring, and ironically, this led to both their destructions. Morgoth became pathetic and weak by the end. Sauron followed the ring into oblivion. Interestingly, Sauron became more like Morgoth as time progressed. His motivations never became as twisted as his master's, but his fearfulness and ignorance certainly did. Here's where the difference between them becomes truly disturbing. Morgoth's ultimate goal, as Tolkien explains in Myths Transformed from Morgoth's Ring, was simple: destruction. Complete, total, absolute destruction. He became so irrational, so enraged at the mere existence of life other than himself, that Tolkien concluded Morgoth would eventually destroy even his own creatures and servants. Once they were gone, he would attempt to undo all of creation itself. Just Morgoth walking around in a destroyed world, screaming in rage, trying to break mountains with his hammer. But here's the cosmic irony. This was beyond Morgoth's power. He could destroy physical bodies, but he couldn't destroy spirits. They would always exist in the halls of Mandos. He could severely damage Arda, but he couldn't truly unmake it. The world would always exist in potential, even if all was ruined and mad. Morgoth fell to evil because he wanted to create, but couldn't. And his ultimate goal was to destroy, but he couldn't do that either. He was incapable of true victory or true satisfaction. His existence was eternal, impotent rage. Sauron's endgame was completely different, and in some ways, worse. Unlike Morgoth, the existence of others never offended Sauron. He was fine with life existing, provided it submitted to his will, and became part of his dominion. We see this throughout the Second and Third Ages, where vast regions of Middle-earth lived under Sauron's control. Those who resisted were fit only for destruction, which is why he waged war against the Westlands for thousands of years. But in a world where Sauron won, life would continue. Civilization would exist, but it would be hell. We've seen what societies under Sauron's influence become: cruel, greedy, violent. Slavery is normalized. In Numenor's case, even human sacrifice. Nature is destroyed, forests cut down for fuel, mountains hollowed for metal, animals driven to extinction, rivers polluted from industrial waste. And without divine intervention, this dystopian nightmare would be eternal. Sauron is a demigod with no natural expiry date. As George Orwell wrote in 1984, and it applies perfectly to Sauron's world, if you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. So Morgoth and Sauron were similar in many ways, both evil, both powerful, both brutal, both delighting in their enemies' suffering. But they differed fundamentally in style, in treatment of allies and foes, in thought processes. Most importantly, Morgoth was chaos. Sauron was order. Morgoth desired destruction. Sauron desired dominion. And despite these differences, they both ended in the same place: cast down, diminished, their power broken, their ambitions turned to nothing. The irony is perfect. Morgoth wanted to destroy everything and couldn't. Sauron wanted to control everything and lost control. Both poured their power into objects that led to their downfall. Both were undone by the very nature of good they couldn't comprehend. In the end, Middle-earth was saved not because good was stronger, but because evil, in all its forms, contains the seeds of its own destruction. Morgoth's chaos created enemies who united against him. Sauron's order depended on a ring that could be unmade. Different evils, different methods, same fate.